All right, so we had jobs data out today, and the jobs data actually looks like the economy is really doing well, and that's not really good, because if the economy is really doing well, then Powell can't really cut rates, or isn't justified in cutting rates. So we got the data. The data was that we got 147,000 new non-farm jobs, and they were expecting 110,000. The unemployment rate was 4.1, and they expected the unemployment rate to be 4.3%. So the economy is stronger than expected, and that's why the Bitcoin price came down. But if you look at the Bitcoin price, it came down from about 110,000 all the way back down to 109,000, but it's still on the daily and on the weekly. You can see above this downward trend that it's been in since the beginning of May, so to speak. And if we break out, if this breakout is actually real, then I'm going to show you why I think that we could get to about 166,000 on Bitcoin, and we could get there pretty much within the month of July. I'm going to show you exactly how that happens. But that's under the condition that one thing doesn't happen, right? And that one thing that mustn't happen is that they have to stop hunting Powell. Because right now, what it looks like is that they're looking for any excuse to get rid of Powell so they could reduce interest rates. And I'm going to show you how, even though a Powell replacement may be more favorable for interest rates, it's not going to be good for markets. We're going to speak a little bit about that. And then lastly, in the good news section, because we have another good news section, we're going to talk about altcoins. And I'm going to show you a couple of indicators that justify the theory that not only is the S&P 500 going to continue to go up, but so is Bitcoin going to continue to go up and hit that all-time high, and then so are altcoins going to start moving up. I'm going to show you how that whole train basically lands up going. So if that sounds good to you on a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful green day, which we haven't had for a long time, all I need you to do is subscribe to the channel, and let's get the show on the road, guys. Josh, you know what I've noticed? When you start the show late, like you've been starting the show late the last couple of days, in the chat, they call me too late run, like too late Powell. Do you know that means that they could be coming after me next? Because if he's too late Powell and I'm too late run, they may start coming after me next. So please, I've got to ask you, please, you got to start the show on time. I don't want to be known as too late run. I see people in the chat are saying, 𝗕𝗏𝗪 called me too late run. Too late Josh. Too late Ranjit. Okay, let's get a little bit more serious. So guys, lots to talk about today. I'm going to show you why I think that this Bitcoin pump is actually real. I've told you that for the last couple of days. So, we're just sticking to our thesis. But what I didn't realize is that if we actually do get a breakout, we could actually get a breakout to $166,000. You heard that correctly, $166,000. Not only that, but if we do get the breakout to $166,000, then I'm going to show you how altcoins actually have a path to actually start running for now. The reason why I'm stuttering a bit is like I'm watching the Bitcoin price here. And as I was prepping for the show, when the unemployment numbers came out, the price went down. Here, it's this big, nasty red candle over here. The price went down from like 110 back to 108.819. And I was going to change the thumbnail to say, don't worry about the jobs numbers. But I think that the thumbnail basically does justice to what we're going to be speaking about today. So what actually happened? Well, we got the job numbers. The job numbers were too strong. Basically, the economy is too strong. We were all hoping the economy would become slightly weaker, because that would mean that Powell would need to reduce interest rates. But instead of that, what we got is the economy added 147,000 non-farm payroll jobs. And therefore, the unemployment rate, which everyone expected to come in at 4.3, is now strong again at 4.1, right? And that's not good, because that means that Powell can't really, on good conscience, reduce interest rates in July. And that's actually exactly what happened. If you look at the poly markets, so this is the poly markets around the Fed decision in July. So what you can see is that if you look at this line over here, which is the 25 bips, the red line, which is at 25 basis points, earlier on today, it was a 25% or 24% chance that there'd be a 25 basis points, a 0.25 interest points rate cut. And now that has dropped to 6%. So poly markets are telling you that Powell really can't reduce interest rates. Let's see what the CME are actually saying here. This is jumping around. It's quite dynamic. It's like before the show, it was 25%. Okay, now it's 5%. So 5% chance that we're going to get a 25 basis points rate cut. I think now what happens is that we're in the hands of inflation. So there's one more inflation reading on the July 15th. I think the inflation numbers are the big daddy now. If inflation numbers come in at, I would say, 2.4, 2.3 or below, then I think there's a good chance that we actually get the July rate cut. If not, then I think we have to postpone it for September. I'm quietly hopeful that we get the first rate cut in July. And I'll show you in a few seconds why I think there are some other, you could call them mitigating circumstances as to why that's going to happen. So that's the non-farm payrolls numbers, and that's the unemployment numbers. Let's look at the Bitcoin chart, and let's look at the thesis as to why I think this pump may actually make it. So I think let's just start off with the beginning. If you look at this is the daily chart, and if you look at the weekly chart, remember the weekly chart only closes, oh, you didn't see it. So that's the daily chart, and this is the weekly chart. Both on the daily and on the weekly, we seem to be breaking out of this 109 level. Now, you'll remember that the 109 level, or the 109 level is the last stop before we get to the all-time high, where there's some slight resistance at the all-time high, like at 112,000. And so I came out yesterday, and as this broke, and I thought it had broken convincingly, I said, okay, this is actually the breakout that's taking us past the all-time highs. This is the breakout. And I must say, I actually stick to that thesis, that this is the breakout that takes us to the all-time highs. I'll show you in a second why I think the fundamentals actually do that. But I think that this breakout actually gets you to the all-time highs. And not only that, I think if we get this breakout, if this breakout is actually real, I think we could actually get to a Bitcoin price of above 150,000 and maybe even close to 166,000. And I want to show you what the thesis is for that. So if we look at what this bull market's actually been, it's been a whole lot of sideways action, like hitting an all-time high, sideways action, sideways action, sideways action, sideways action, and then we've had a breakout. And if you look at it over here, you had sideways action, sideways action, sideways action. So here was the all-time high, sideways action, sideways action, sideways action, sideways action, down to here, and then we had a breakout. And the same thing over here. You had the sideways action, and then eventually you got the breakout, and when you got the breakout, you went up again. That's the pattern of this bull market. But I think what's more interesting about the pattern of this bull market is when you look at the magnitude of the moves, right? So let's take this move over here. So you got to this all-time high over here, which was a 73,000. That was the all-time high from March. We had the chop, and the chop went on for 241 days. It was a very, very, very long chop. I remember that. That was a killer. That was the election chop, if you want to call it that. But then from the point of the all-time high all the way up to the new all-time high, we went up 50%. So you can see that's about a 50% move over there, right? Let's go to the period before. So we had a choppy period over here. This was December 23, and it was a choppy period all the way up to about March 24. And then when we broke from this all-time high, you can take that all-time high, or in fact, let's even be more scientific and take the highest point in that chop, which is this point over here. And you draw this line over here. What you realize is, again, that the move was 50%. And if you carry on going back, if you go even further back and you say, let's take this chop over here, right? So you got this chop over here. This was the 31,000. The top of this chop was $31,000. When we broke out of it, we broke out of it by about 50%. And so what you're seeing here is that if you look at this bull market and you go to the beginning of this bull market and you say, what does this bull market actually look like? It looks like a bunch of choppiness. And then when we break out, we usually break out in 50% increments. And now we've been ranging again. So if you look at this, we've been ranging from about, you could say like we probably started ranging about in November 2024. We were at about 100,000. Yeah, we've gone up to 107 and 110. But ultimately, we've been ranging around that level now for about, let's just more or less drop our cursor over here and go all the way to where we are today, 232 days. And as you've seen in other parts of this cycle, you've ranged for 200 days, 221 days, whatever the number of days is, and then eventually you get the explosive move. And when you do get the explosive move, in every other time, that's actually taken us up about 50%, right? So that is what we saw in this chart. We saw that there are 50% continuous moves this entire cycle. Trend, up 50%. Trend. You see from that line over there, trend, up 50%. Then we chop, up 50%. Then we chop, and we go up 50%. And if we apply that same mathematics here, we trend sideways, trend. When we break up above this level, logically the move should be about a 50% move, and that takes us to about 166,000. So that also corresponds to the fibs. If you look at the Fibonacci's and you look at the moves in the Fibonacci's, basically what you can see is that the next fib lies at about 166,000. And so you can kind of see that we have actually been moving up with the fibs the whole way. We've been chopping, moving up with the fibs, chopping, moving up and stopping at the different Fibonacci levels. And the next fib level is at about 166,000, which goes back to more or less where we said on this chart. If we go up about 55%, we're going to go back to 166,000. The thing about these upward moves is also what I want you to notice. So what happens is you'll end up chopping for a long time. And then when you get the move is usually quite violent. So you usually get a small move up first with a slight pullback, and then you go up again. You can kind of see it over here. When you went, you had a small move up, a slight pullback, and then you went straight back up, and you went back up kind of violently. When I say kind of violently, these moves are often completed within, so let's go here to the breakout from there, and the move to the first top point here was less than a month. It was about 45 days, which was just over a month. So if we do actually break out of this 109 range, and for now it looks like we could actually break out above it, and we do follow the same pattern that we've been following this whole bull market, then the next move could actually be a 50% move to the upside to correspond to the Fibonacci's. When we get to the top of the Fibonacci, we'll probably start consolidating here, and that may take us coincidentally to the next target. Now, that next target, which is a 250,000 target, is my target for Bitcoin for the end of this year, and so also for the end of the cycle. And that would mean that if we go up in the next 30 days, it gives us about 4 or 5 months of chop before we have to go up to the top to get to the 250,000, which is my target for the rest of the year. So that's that is how I'm seeing this Bitcoin move. And that's why I'm saying that if we do get a Bitcoin move now, if we do break up above this level, then I do think that we can actually get to those levels. And there are, like, if you want to look at the stats and you want to look at the data, there's a lot of stats and a lot of data that actually strengthen that view. So I'll show you just some of the data. So the one thing we know about the cycle is we know that on average, Q3 post-halvings return 49%. So if you look at the Q3 and the post-halving Q3s are 2013, 2017, and 2021, you can see that it's 40. We got a 40% in Q3 in 2021. In 2017, we got an 80%, and in 2021 we got a 25%. And now we're in Q3. So what we know is that the Q3 post-halving year is the most aggressive one, or between that and Q4, let's say half two in post-halving year is the most violent half. And as we see that Bitcoin's gone back over 110,000, completely shrugged off all the unemployment data, and ETH above it at 2,625. ETH actually ripping, and we'll actually talk about that in a couple of secs. So yeah, that's the first thing. Julian Bittel, he says that this whole thing that's happening now in the S&P is a combination of people being short and people FOMOing in. He says it's up about 30% of the April lows, sitting at new all-time highs, while speculators have remained stubbornly short and sidelined the entire time. Classic pain trade, which could actually send us up for another leg, which is I think I must say that it does feel very good. What also feels very good is that there's no leverage. We're at an all-time high. We're literally 2,000. We're 1.5% away from a Bitcoin all-time high. Look at this leverage chart. It's green and some of it is blue, which means that there is no leverage. People don't have any confidence. There's no leverage in the system. There's also no volatility in the system. If you look at the implied volatility over here, there's no volatility in the system. Look how low the implied volatility is, which means that right now options trading becomes very, 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 very cheap, right? So that is like pretty much the lay of the land here. I think it's like where we're at now is it's almost setting up for one of those classic Bitcoin bull market moves. We haven't seen one of those classic Bitcoin bull market moves for a long time. Those bull market moves are the ones where when you look at the price, it's like at 110 the first minute, you look at it the next minute, it's like 112, 113, 114, 115. Remember, I think we've got like one more level of support and or resistance. And that one more level of resistance is actually the all-time high, which was at 112. And I don't think it's very big resistance because we didn't spend a long time here. There's not much resistance here. We didn't spend a long time. And then we're going to go into price discovery, just like the S&Ps in price discovery. Just like like I think the S&P and a lot of other markets inside the S&P are also in price discovery. All right, so that is the Bitcoin thesis and why I think we're going to get. I think this is going to be a violent move if it holds. So remember, in order to hold, remember I keep saying if it holds. I can't tell you if it will or it won't. My feeling is that it will because of everything that I've told you. But we have to close above this line today, and we have to close above the same line on Sunday. And if we do, then I'm pretty confident that this move is the one, and this is the one that's taking us to the all-time highs. Cool. So yeah, that's that. I want to talk a little bit about this Powell thing, because the one thing that actually could derail markets and destabilize markets now is it's not going to be the tariff wars, because we kind of know that if Trump wants Powell to reduce interest rates, the last thing he can afford to do is bring back tariff risk. Tariff risk has got to be completely off the table. And so now what we're seeing that Trump is starting to announce trade deals. There's a trade deal with China. There's a trade deal with Vietnam. There's no trade deal with Japan, but there probably will be a trade deal with Japan. It's probably like just last minute posturing. We've got 6 more days until the 90 days lapses. And there is a chance that Trump will go crazy with one of his tweet storms around tariffs and stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen because of the relationship with Jerome Powell. Before we get into the altcoins, I actually want to spend some time talking about this Jerome Powell thing, because I think it's quite a serious thing. So we know that Trump has been very, very vocal against Jerome Powell. He's called him too late Powell. You guys are calling me too late run. Crazy what's going on in the chat here. But anyway, and crazy what's going on with the Bitcoin price, back at 110,000, 1098. So up until now, Trump has been calling for Powell to resign. He wants him to resign. He's been threatening that he actually has 2 replacements. I don't know if you guys saw this, but when he was on Airport One, on Air Force One the other day, Airport One, he was saying that he has 2 choices. He declined to mention exactly who the 2 choices were, but he said, "Look, I've got 2 choices to basically replace Powell." So you guys, he's been threatening Powell. But yesterday, this actually took a turn from just calling him too late Powell to actually almost targeting him and trying to get him to leave the Fed. And the way that this whole thing started was, it started with this guy here. His name is Bill or William 𝗙𝗚𝗡. He's the guy. He's the head of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Is the U.S. Federal Housing Council chairman. And he said, "I'm asking Congress to investigate Chairman Jerome Powell, his political bias, and his deceptive Senate testimony, which is enough to be removed for cause. Jerome Powell's $2.5 billion building renovation scandal stinks to high heaven, and he lied when he was asked about the specifics before Congress. This is nothing short of malfeasance and is worthy for cause." As Senator Cynthia Lummis said, he made a number of factually incorrect statements to the committee regarding the Fed's plush private dining room and elevator, skylights, water features, and roof terrace. And to this is typical of mismanagement and don't bother me attitude of Chairman Powell. So what does it feel like? It feels like they're going after Powell and they want to get rid of him no matter which way. Trump then went to True Social and he said, "Too late, Powell should resign immediately." And he quoted the same Bloomberg article that was written. It's not this article here. It was an article that was written which basically quoted Bill Pulte or Bill Pult or whatever, however you pronounce his name. When Powell was questioned in the Senate, and he said there's no fancy dining room, no marble, and definitely no rooftop garden for the bees, despite Powell denying the VIP perks. Official documents list private elevators, marble, and rooftop gardens for urban wildlife. And so now they're saying, look, he's been deceptive about it. He's been deceptive about it during testimony, and that is, of course, illegal. I think that's perjury, because I think it's sworn testimony. And now I think they're looking for a way to get rid of him. So let's talk about what happens if they do get rid of Powell. So yeah, bro, the crypto bros are going to be super excited, because then Trump can put in his own Fed chairperson, and that Fed chairperson can be a Fed chairperson that can actually reduce rates. And as Powell has mentioned, as Trump has mentioned, he has 2 replacements. And if you go to Polymarket, let's quickly just go to Polymarket, Powell replacement. Let's see if there is a market for this. What will Powell replacement? Let's see if we can. Let's see if there is. I'm sure there's a market for this. Who will replace Powell? Let's see what it is. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we get next Fed chair. Maybe that'll be next Fed. Who will Trump announce as the next Fed chair? And you can see there's already a market around who Trump will announce as the new chair right now. Scott Bessent is actually moving very much up the ranks. He was quite low down the ranks, and now it's Kevin Walsh. I said to you the other day, I do think that Scott Bessent would be the one that he actually replaces. No man, come on, you're not going to announce Elon Musk. Okay, I see that. Okay, amazing. So I actually think it's going to be Scott Bessent. He loves Scott Bessent. But then the problem is, who becomes Treasury Secretary? I don't know. I don't know what the mechanics are there. Let me tell you the one thing. If this happens, it's not a good thing. We don't want Powell to be politically forced to move out of the Fed. Because the one thing that the US values more than a chairman of the Fed that's actually cutting rates and a strong economy is the separation and the politicization of things that shouldn't be politicized, right? And the one thing that the Americans do want more than lower interest rates is separation between the Fed and the president. Because otherwise, there's too much power in the hands of the president, and Americans don't like that. Even if it's a good president, Americans just generally don't like that. So I do think that Powell should start cutting rates. And I do think that Powell should be replaced, but I think he should be replaced in mid-2026 when his 10 years over. And that's it. And I don't think that it's worth getting him out sooner for a little bit of extra rate cuts, because the instability that would cause in markets is going to be gargantuous. And I say again, I think right now, I think that Scott Bessent will be the logical next replacement, the logical replacement. Yeah, so that is the story. I hope it doesn't happen. We want stability in the markets. That's the main thing that we want. We need stability. Out of everything, the main thing we need stability. Should we talk about... Okay, well, let's talk about altcoins, but indirectly. I'm not really talking about altcoins yet. I will get to the altcoins, but there is actually one indicator which may actually be linked to the interest rate cuts, which may actually show us when the alt season is going to start. And I hate using the word alt season. Let's call the alt season a season where the bigger alts start to outperform Bitcoin for a very short period of time. And that season usually comes in Q3 and Q4 of the post-halving year, right? That's like usually when it happens. But I dug into some data, or more rightly, the researchers dug into some data. And I found that there was actually another indicator that coincided with lower interest rates that actually was much more accurate in terms of predicting alt season, right? So I'm going to show you the indicator first. So the indicator is what you call the ISM. Okay, so that's the ISM indicator. When this indicator goes under 50, but then breaks up above 50, in 2013, 2014, in 2016 and 2017, and in 2020 and 2021, all of those times, it coincided with a monstrous move up in Bitcoin and a much more monstrous move up in the altcoins, right? So what is this ISM index, and why is it relevant to the altcoins? Well, it's not directly relevant to the altcoins, but it is related to how confident people perceive the economy, right? So when people, you'll notice that when interest rates start to drop, and when I say start to drop, I don't mean interest rates dropping very, 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 very quickly because of a housing crisis in 2008 or because of a COVID crisis in 2020. But when interest rates start to drop, what you realize is that the ISM actually starts to go up. So what is this ISM? The ISM is a manufacturing sector index. It measures the health of the manufacturing sector. Now let's talk about the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is a sector that requires a lot of investment. And so what you need is these managers to be very confident in the economy in order to make that investment in the future, right? And so the components that it measures new orders, it measures production, it measures employment, it measures supply deliveries, and it measures inventory, right? Now, the ISM here, it's a monthly survey across businesses across the country, and it looks at these economic indicators, and if it's above 50, it's considered to be positive, and if it's below 50, it's considered to be negative. Now, what's exciting about this now is that the ISM has been below 50 for a long period of time. You can see it's been below 50 since about 2023. It's touched 50 once or twice, but it's remained below 50 for a while. And you can see that that's the same thing that happened over here and the same thing that happened over here, except now it's been below 50 for a long time, which means that for quite a while, these manufacturers haven't been very confident about the economy. So we had an ISM reading yesterday. The ISM reading went slightly up and it was slightly ahead of forecast. It's now at 49. And if this thing actually lands up breaking above 50, then it has been probably the most accurate indicator of when the economy is going to expand, and therefore when Bitcoin starts expanding and everything else. So you can see it. You can see it over here. This is the violent move in total market cap after it breaks up to 50. You see it broke up to 50 here, and it broke above 50 here. It's slightly on the uptick. The next reading is going to happen it happens every month. So you're going to have July, August, September. If we continue this uptrend and we break above 50, that again tells us that we could be getting into Q3, Q4, a massive move in Q3, Q4, which will mean a move in the altcoins, which also corresponds to the next data points that I have, right? So it's kind of like today, all the data came together to kind of show that we could actually get this explosive move. I didn't plan it like that. It's just when the data flies at you, you basically just got to read the data, right? So let's talk about the altcoins. Good day for the altcoins, but still a lot of sideways movement. So we're not those people that are getting excited by these moves. Why? Because we know that even though we're getting green bubbles today, we had red bubbles for the last couple of days, right? And so we're pretty much where we were a couple of days ago, maybe slightly higher. I know most people aren't even at break even on their portfolios. Josh, are you at break even yet in your portfolio? Bro, you told me half an hour ago you were down. I mean, come on. I think we should stay on the stream as long as possible, because the longer we're on the stream, the more the Bitcoin price is going up. It's like a fun stream. The Bitcoin price is just going up and up and up. Anyway, so I want to show you some data around the altcoins. So the altcoins are green today. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first thing is we had the first Solana ETF yesterday. Good day for Solana ETF. It's not a real ETF, as you know. $33 million in volume with $12 million in net inflows. So let's see if they actually carry that on. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to show you a couple of indicators. One of them even comes from Ben Cowan. So Ben Cowan says, he takes an indicator which he says, let's take the Bitcoin dominance plus the ETH dominance plus the USDC dominance and plus the USDT dominance. And he says that when you take those, barring this one anomaly, which is COVID over here, this is just before COVID or just after COVID, barring that, it usually tops at about 82. What that means is that it usually tops at about 82, which means that from here, the smaller altcoins usually tend to run. The altcoins that are not Bitcoin and not ETH usually tend to run when this thing tops at about 82. Now, obviously, this time can be different, but for now, we're topping at about 82. On top of that, at exactly the same time as this happened, we also got the golden cross in ETH. So you can see that's the ETH chart on the daily. We got the golden cross in ETH. You can see that the golden cross in ETH, again, it's quite a big deal. Like there's a golden cross in ETH, and that took us, I just want to measure some moves for you guys. So that's when the golden cross happened. The move took us all the way up to here. Took us up 112%. We had another golden cross over here. even this small golden cross over here took us up about 20% on ETH. So it's quite the golden crosses on ETH can be quite violent, and we've got a golden cross on ETH right now. Also ETH, so golden cross, and also ETH above the 200 simple SMA right now, which is another bullish sign. And then there's this tweet by 𝗕𝗂𝗙𝗲 who says the structural similarities in ETH between this cycle and versus the last cycle can't be ignored. While Bitcoin made new all-time highs in December of 2020, ETH was still down 60% from its previous cycle highs. Everyone called it dead. From there, ETH climbed more than 800%, while Bitcoin moved up only 200%. Now, obviously, you can't compare the moves or the size of the move to 2020 because the market caps are much bigger. But it could be that this is very much ETH time to shine. And if it is ETH time to shine, then it probably means that it's the altcoins time to shine. So to summarize, I do think that if we break here, we're going to get a violent move in Bitcoin. If we get that violent move in Bitcoin, if Bitcoin starts going up 20 or 30%, that's going to give people real confidence in the cycle. And if they get real confidence, they're going to start feeling more comfortable to allocate to more assets. And soon they're going to have a whole lot of ETFs to be able to allocate to those assets. And that could start driving the markets back up. So I think Q3, Q4 looking good. I agree with the fibs. Who am I to agree with the fibs? That we do get to like $250,000. We do get to about $250,000 here. Let's check up on our bots. Let's see how the bots are doing today. Okay, so my remember I put in 45,000. I had 10,000 more in this account in Bukele bots. So that's up $800 in 2 days. Two days or 3 days? I think 2 days. I think it's 2 days. Let's see how the bot's actually doing. This is Bukele bot, for those of you who haven't been following. He's a bot that accumulates Bitcoin over time. He does it slowly and steadily. He is now, okay, so I put in 45,000. I've got 45,800 in 2 days. That's basically, let's see if he's in any trades at the moment. Okay, he is currently long. He's long from 109,541. He's long at a 7x. Remember, if you want to follow him, you have to use this link. If you don't, you're not going to be able to get into that bot. You have to use this link over here to sign up to 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗻 and then copy on that bot. Also, I'm reminding you again that if you're looking for a non-KYC exchange, 𝗕𝗏𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏 have got these amazing sign-up bonuses. You sign up and you get a 10% money back deposit bonus, which is, I think it's one of the biggest deposit bonuses that I've actually seen in the industry, to be honest. What else is there? Okay, I see one of our sponsors here. We've got a sponsor. The sponsor is called Elastos. What these guys do is they're quite an old protocol. They've been around since like the early days of blockchain. Even in 2016 and 2017, I remember them. They merge mined with Bitcoin. And they're launching a layer 2. I think the layer 2 launches in August. But now they've got the first Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. So they're talking about the first Bitcoin dollar. It's a fully Bitcoin-based stablecoin which launched. So they've got it. So go if you are interested in a fully Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, go and check it out. And then I think, look, I need to give a shout out to another one of our sponsors, which is I have to give the shout out because I haven't been speaking about meme coins because I'm not really a big fan of meme coins, but there are a few that are much more legit. And one of them is 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗎𝗔𝗧𝗪𝗔. 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗎𝗔𝗧, it's a very well-known property with lots of, like if you go to Instagram, let me just see if my Instagram is actually linked here. Let me actually show it to you. Josh, do you follow 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗎𝗔𝗧𝗪𝗔? It's like a big meme. It's like a big meme in like the real world. You know what I mean? Here we go. So it's got 7.7 million followers on Instagram. It's a huge meme in the real world. Here it is. You can see it on Instagram right here. And so they've gone up, I think, 300% in the last 3 days. You've got to take your hat off to them. It looks like it's on a massive recovery. 306% in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. 306% in the last 5 days. Can you believe it? What else? I kind of I enjoy watching this bot make money. I don't know. It's like one of those, like, I've got a bit of a, what do you call it? Like a addiction to watching him make money. 54,824. Let's see if tomorrow it can be on 55,824. Let's see if I can get more. Someone says Carl's sausage pumping. Yeah, Carl has been pumping the sausage, eh? Crazy. All right, let's take another look at the markets. 110,500, 110,414, 110,488 on this chart. 110,488 on this chart. Let's try and help it along. Someone says still feeling shaky. Nobody saw she's at 12,550x leverage. Jeez. Wow. 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗪 is pumping. I just did the prayer. Muma, where have you been, bro? I just did the prayer. Let's look at the bubbles. Anything running in the bubbles? Top 100. Let's look at stocks, actually. Let's see what's going on. Stocks are also cooking like gas, bro. Oof. Look at that. Palantir up to. Okay, you know what? When you look at stocks, the bubbles look big, but it's like 2 and 3%. But then when you go to crypto, the bubbles look small, but like it's 9% because everything's moving up. Long may this pump last, guys. Long may this pump last. I think we deserve it. Someone says I miss Sheldon. Sheldon is having the time of his life. Don't worry about Sheldino. Oh, you know what we can do? Guys, I got Sheldon's indicator. I actually installed Sheldon's indicator. Well, he let me install it. Here we go. Let's see what his indicator is saying. No, bro, come on. You can't tell me there's no buys and no sells. No buys and no sells. I think this indicator is broken or something. It's supposed to flash buys and sells. Anyway, we'll wait for the indicator to tell us what to do. All right, chaps. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, trade well, my friends.